Chapter 11. A Turn for the Worse. Conrad had a cousin from Bedminster, New Jersey, who he had told us about once in a while, and he thought he would invite his cousin to stay at his house for a few days during the summer, and we could all hang out, party, and probably find something wrong to do. Sure enough, one day, Conrad showed up with his cousin. His name was Bobby. Bobby's reputation preceded him, as Conrad had given us a pretty good backdrop to the kind of things he had already been involved in, as far as breaking the law and the whole juvenile delinquency thing. Kind of like us, but he was a step or two ahead of us, having already been to court for numerous things, and doing time in a juvenile detention center. Well, they say birds of a feather flock together. We liked Bobby, and we all got along with him pretty well. He was also one tough kid, so we looked up to him a bit, too. Well, geez, to be good hosts, we better get some beer, hit the train tracks, and get the party going. Finding someone of age to get us beer was not usually a problem, as we had a small circle of connections, but it was usually a bit of work, being you had to find the person, they had to be available at the time, then go through the awkwardness of asking them to buy it for you, again and again. But the mission at hand was the most important thing. The only real problem we ever had sometimes was scraping up the money to pay for it and maybe a few bucks extra on top to tip the buyer with an extra six-pack for themselves. For some buyers it was a courtesy, for some it was a rule, understandably. Personally, I don't know what the hell anyone was thinking risking jail to buy us punks some beer. But Bobby quickly figured out a way for us to bypass all of that and expedite the whole operation. A few doors down from Conrad's house, also along the train tracks, was a bar called the Stopover. Coming and going from Conrad's house on foot, Cousin Bobby noticed there was a small hatch door that led to the basement of the bar. It was kind of small, and it was kind of an old building, and the window was obviously kind of rickety looking. So it looked like that little hatch door with a glass window was the only thing between us and the untold riches in beer, liquor, and whatever else they stored down there in that basement. We must have walked past that place a million times with that little hatch door in plain view, but never had the idea before. So we put our gang together, Conrad, Bobby, my brother, myself, and a couple others, and we put together our plan. We planned on the early morning hours, being the bar wouldn't be closed until 2 a.m. The glass window on the hatch door would have to be broken, then reach inside to unlock it. Being the hatch was small, it looked like only one of us would go through it, into the basement, and start handing out whatever was down there. Once handed out, the goods would be daisy-chained by the rest, 3 or 4 of us, down a dirt path to the train tracks about 100 feet away. Once we had everything to the tracks and stacked, we would all break away from the bar and daisy-chain again down the tracks a quick stretch and up another dirt path to Conrad's house in the safety of dark. When it was time, everything went according to plan. Everyone showed, the glass practically fell out of the old hatch door, and the only lock inside was a small hook and latch. Conrad slipped through the open hatch and started handing cases of beer out to Bobby, then the rest of us would do the carrying to the tracks. We were silent and determined, but ready to run if we were spotted. We, the ones humping the beer, would have an easy getaway, being we were already on the dirt path along the train tracks. But Bobby at the hatch door was out in the open, and Conrad was down inside, so if we were caught, he would have to shimmy back up out of there before he could run, costing him precious seconds. Once the cases of beer started coming out of there, they just kept coming. Not 1 or 2 cases of beer, but something like 15 or so cases and a couple of few crates of assorted liquor wound up being daisy-chained out of there. We were already drinking the merchandise while we were carrying it down the tracks to Conrad's house. Once we reached our destination, we stacked the cases along the wooden stockade fence that separated the neighbor's yard. We drank there quietly, patting ourselves on the back for pulling it off. We were drinking beer we had never even tried before, domestic and imported, liquor as well. Anybody for a shot of Jack? Vodka? Brandy? One of each? As the sun began to come up, our work was done and we dispersed ourselves back to our home half in the bag. Sworn secrecy to our stash and what we had done. We actually had made and executed a good plan, but failed to plan for much after we had gotten the stolen booze in our possession. We didn't make that much of an effort to cover our tracks, both literally or figuratively. For starters, from the train tracks, we could have taken the goods anywhere from there and stashed it safely, but we took it directly to Conrad's house. Not to mention, we really didn't even hide it. We just stacked it on the side of his house up along the neighbor's fence, out in the open, and went home. Smooth. Early afternoon the next day, when we all started to show up back at Conrad's house, it was time to really drink. Right there in broad daylight, where we piled the cases as tall as we were. Some other kids that weren't involved started showing up with someone else, and another one brought a sibling. It was a bad scene, and I think we all felt it by then. Anyone and everyone who came around us was told to never speak of it to anyone else, and Bobby swore to enforce punishment to anyone who did. Cool, I hope that's going to be good enough, but I doubt it. So for the meantime, we drank and drank and drank and drank. As we were all in a drunken huddle, laughing and playing drinking games around the towering beer cases, someone said, "Shh, look, there, the fence." We all looked, and through a knothole in the wooden fence was the neighbor's little boy staring through at us. Oh shit. Hey, go on, get out of here, kid. That little kid got out of there all right. Right back up to his house and told his dad to come look. Oy vey, let's get the hell out of here. Where were we supposed to go? And we have to hide this beer somewhere fast. That might have been a good thing to incorporate in the plan beforehand, but too late for crying now. We tried to quickly move all the cases back down the path and have at least some cover of trees and some brush, but it was too late. The neighbor had already alerted the police. Once we panicked and fled back to our homes, the tracks, and wherever, all we could do was cross our fingers and try and stay low. So we would be caught underage drinking and or possession of alcohol, big whoop-de-doo. We would laugh at that kind of shit. But we knew it was only a matter of time before the bar reported a break-in and we were done. Later after dark, I showed up back to Conrad's house to get the latest. As I walked up the path to his house, from the tracks, I noticed the beer was gone from our hideaway spot. This was not a good sign. When I got inside up to Conrad's room, there Conrad and Bobby sat, staring at the floor, smoking. They didn't have to say anything. I knew that was it. I asked them, "So, did the cops come?" "Yep." Oh man. I sat down next to them and couldn't help but ask, "Are they coming to my house too?" "I don't know. We didn't say your name, but we don't know who else they're talking to, so you better stay low." Shit. Shit. Bobby's visit was ending prematurely and he was about to be taken home. I took the train tracks back to my house and sat there hoping for the best. Every car that drove by, every sound I heard, I thought were the police coming for me. It was only morning of the next day. They showed up at my door. When they came to my house, I told my younger brother, no matter what, no matter how long they keep asking questions, that you were never there and you know nothing about it, no matter what. I knew they already had me to some extent. I could just feel it. But I knew it would be easier for me alone if there was any chance of wiggling out of it rather than both of us involved and stories not matching up. When I opened the door, the two officers stood there with their pens and pads and said, "I guess you know why we're here." No, what brings you here?" "Did you break into that bar too?" "Bar? What bar? Who broke into a bar?" "Fred, we know you were there. We know who was involved. I don't know anything about a bar." "Are you telling me you weren't drinking beer at Conrad's house yesterday?" "Yeah, sure, we drank a few beers, that was all." "Where did the beer come from?" "I think he said his cousin had gotten someone to buy it for him, something like that. I never saw the guy. I didn't even pitch in. I just drank a couple beers and went home. Nothing new." "No, Fred, no one bought anything. This is serious. Why don't you tell us what happened?" "I'm trying to tell you, nothing happened. We had a few beers, I left. You think your friends didn't rat on you? They did. Now tell us what happened." "Who ratted on me?" "That's not important. Just tell us the story. Who broke in and entered through the window?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Who ratted on me?" "You're just making it harder on yourself." My mother came in the living room where the police were already sat. They told her that charges were going to be pressed against me for breaking and entering, stolen goods, or whatever the hell. I did my best to stick to the story that I pretty much came up with on the spot. Again, maybe something we all should have thought of beforehand. It looks like it was too late now. Maybe one of us did get scared and spew out everyone's names. Maybe the father of that little kid knew who everyone was and told them who he saw. Or maybe the police, after talking to Conrad, just made a safe assumption that I would be another likely one to be involved. Being we were friends, had been in trouble together in the past, so maybe the police just pulled the old bluff again, telling me I was already identified. I guess I never knew the answer to that one. After a short while passed, a lot of police statements from this one and that one, the truth somehow rose to the top and we all went to court for it, except for my brother Brian, who I maintain was not involved till the end. We all went in front of the infamous Judge Miller, whose name was enough to send terror through our spines. This time when I had gone to juvenile court, I had recently been done and off of probation for maybe 1 year or so, for whatever we had been in trouble for last. I was sentenced to something like 2 years of probation and maybe community service. From what I understand, as far as the bar itself was concerned, when we did turn legal drinking age, another 5 or 6 years away, we were forbidden to enter the stopover bar. For life. Conrad, on the other hand, who I think was still on probation at the time, and who was the one who actually entered through the hatch door and into the building, got the stiffer sentence, and was sent to a juvenile detention center, Jamesburg Home for Boys, in New Jersey. I felt terrible for the poor kid, and I felt guilty getting a lesser sentence. I knew he would be okay in there. Conrad was a tough scrapper. But nonetheless, that must have really sucked being stuck in there, knowing your friends are back home doing whatever they want. I remember not even showing my face around his house out of feeling like his parents would certainly hate me now forever. And while he was away, if I saw anyone in his family, especially his mom or dad, I would say hi but respectfully keep my mouth shut and keep walking. As a result, I never asked if I could tag along when they went to visit him. I never spoke to him on the phone from his house. It was a damn shame, and by that point I'm pretty convinced that the local police actually did have it in for him a little more than the rest of us, and I'm not exactly sure why. I never forgot about Conrad being sentenced to juvenile detention, because later in life, during some of my time in the military, I passed the exit sign that said Jamesburg Home for Boys every day along my commute to McGuire Fort Dix. I would drive past the sign, remember Conrad, and the things we all did as kids, and think to myself, someday I should write a book about that.